Welcome to Curious Minds Unmasked podcast, where we uncover the hidden wonders of the world.
Okay, so get this. Today we're going deep into the world of mediums. You know, those who say they can talk to spirits.
Yeah, the whole communicating with the other side thing.
Right. Always gets the imagination going.
Definitely. It's like people are always going to be fascinated by life and death and what comes after.
Totally. And today we're looking at this woman, Diana Herrera. She calls herself La Roja Medium.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that name.
So she claims she can talk to spirits. But it's not just, she says there are other entities too.
Really? Like what?
She doesn't get too specific, but some sound a lot less friendly than your typical ghost.
Okay, now that's interesting because everyone always wants to know about what happens after we die. But she says she's actually learned stuff from these spirits and entities.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating.
So where does it all begin for her?
Well, she says it started when she was a little kid. She claims she saw her sister after she died.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently it was so real, so vivid that she never forgot it.
You hear about that a lot with mediums, right? Like these early experiences kind of setting them on this path.
For sure. It makes you wonder about, what's really going on there. You know, is it something in their past making them see this stuff, or is it something else entirely?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The whole nature of reality and what we can and can't perceive.
Right. And for Herrera, it wasn't just a one-time thing. She says these abilities just got stronger as she grew up.
Huh. And did that make things easier for her?
Actually, no. It sounds like her teenage years were really rough.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she's talked about how she even tried to take her own life because it was all so overwhelming. She just couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
You know?
that's heavy stuff.
Hmm.
You know, it's easy to be skeptical about all this, but you have to remember there's a real human being at the heart of it with real emotions and struggles.
Absolutely. And so you would think with all that going on, she'd want to keep it all secret, right? But that's not what happened.
She went public.
Yeah. And get this, it sounds like it was a total accident.
How does that happen?
Okay, so picture this. She's on some paranormal show online, right?
Huh.
But she's not even a guest or anything.
Okay.
And then out of nowhere, she ends up giving a reading to someone live on the show.
Whoa, talk about stage fright. I can't even imagine.
Right. You have to have some serious guts to just put yourself out there like that.
For sure. So what happened after that? Does she just crawl back into obscurity?
Not a chance. That actually kind of snowballed into more podcasts, more interviews, even appearances on TV and stuff.
Wow. So she went from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, and that's where this whole thing with the actor Santiago Alarcón comes in.
I think I remember hearing about that. What was it again?
So she's doing her thing right, and she keeps getting this image of a plaid shirt.
A plaid shirt.
Yeah, kind of random.
Yeah.
But she feels like she needs to tell this Alarcón guy about it.
Even though he's a total stranger.
Well, they might have met briefly, but yeah, essentially a stranger.
Mm.
And apparently Alarcón's not really buying it at first. But then get this.
What? Tell me.
He actually finds a plaid shirt like the one Herrera described hidden under his bed.
No way. Get out.
I'm serious. And to make it even crazier, it belonged to his dad who passed away.
Okay, now that's straight out of a movie.
Right, you couldn't make this stuff up.
So what did this do to her, mentally? I mean, after something like that.
It was a huge turning point for her. Like she said, it made her really believe in her abilities.
Yeah, I bet it would be hard to doubt yourself after something that specific and that personal.
Totally. But here's the thing. We always got to remember everyone's experience is their own right. So we're hearing her side of it, her truth.
Totally. Makes sense. And it's from these experiences that she's developed her own ideas about what happens after we die, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things she believes is that when we die, it's not like we instantly arrive in heaven or something.
Oh, so it's not all harps and clouds.
Apparently not. She thinks there's this whole transition period.
Interesting. So like a layover on a really long flight?
Kind of.
Yeah.
But it's not just a quick stop at the cosmic airport. We're talking up to 10 years, she says.
10 years. Okay, now that's a long layover. What's the holdup? Well, she says that spirits can actually get stuck.
Stuck. Like in limbo or something.
Kinda, yeah. Like they can't move on to whatever's next.
Okay, but why? What would make them stuck?
So she says it's different for everyone. Sometimes it's the spirits themselves. They're holding on to something from their life, maybe regrets or unfinished business or even just a person or a place they can't let go of.
Ah, so they're attached to this world still.
Exactly. But then on the flip side, sometimes it's the living people who are keeping the spirit tethered here.
Really? We can do that.
That's what she says. If someone's really grieving and holding on tight, it can actually make it harder for the spirit to move on.
Wow. So it's like our emotions have this power over them even in death.
It's a pretty intense thought, right? It
Yeah.
makes you think about grief in a whole new way. Like maybe it's not just about us and how we cope, but also about them and their journey.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, for sure.
Right.
It's also kind of beautiful, in a way.
Yeah.
Like this idea that our love can stretch beyond the grave.
Yeah, it's definitely a more hopeful way to look at it. And she tells this really sad but also heartwarming story about a mother who was stuck because she needed to see her daughter achieve certain things in life.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Did the daughter know?
I don't think so. I think Herrera just sensed it somehow. But eventually the daughter did reach those milestones, and Herrera says she could actually feel the mother's presence lift, like she was finally free to move on.
Oh, man, that gives me chills. So, okay, we've got spirits who are hanging around for one reason or another, but it's not always our dearly departed that she's dealing with, is it?
You're hitting the nail on the head there. It's not all friendly ghost and heartwarming reunions.
She mentioned something about negative entities, right? Whatever those are.
Yeah, this is where things get a little darker. Herrera says she encounters these entities that are totally different from the spirits of the dead.
Different how?
It's all about the feeling, she says. Like with spirits, even if they're restless or maybe even a little mischievous, there's this baseline sense of familiarity, like you're dealing with another human being, essentially.
Okay, but these entities are different?
Totally different. She describes it as this visceral terror, like something primal that just gets into your skin.
Okay, yeah, that's a completely different vibe. Like,
Yeah.
we're not talking Casper the Friendly Ghost anymore.
Not even close. And she gives this really creepy example of encountering one of these entities on a bus.
Oh, God, on a bus. Tell me you're making this up.
I wish I was. So she's on this bus, right? And she sees this figure, this being that just fills her with this absolute terror. And she says it wasn't just a fleeting thing either. This entity actually approached her, got right up in her space.
Nope. I am never riding public transportation again.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those stories that stays with you.
So she sees this thing on the bus, and then what happens? Does it try to talk to her or something?
She doesn't say, but she makes it very clear that this was not your typical ghost encounter. It was something else entirely, something way more intense and way more frightening.
Okay, so we have to talk about the Satanic Ritual thing now, because that's a whole other level of creepy.
Right. I mean, that one definitely sends chills down your spine.
So she goes to this place, right? This site where she believes some kind of dark ritual went down.
Yeah, and you got to remember, she's claiming to be super sensitive to this stuff. Like, she can sense energy, good or bad. And she said this place was just radiating bad vibes.
Okay, so what happens?
Well, she's there checking out the site, and she says that something physically grabbed her.
No way.
Are you serious?
That's what she claims. Like something actually reached out and made physical contact.
Okay, now that's just terrifying. It's easy to brush this stuff off as spooky stories, but the way she talks about it, the detail she goes into, you can tell that she really believes this happened.
Right, and I think that's what makes her so compelling. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, you can't deny the power of her conviction.
Totally. So we've got spirits stuck between worlds, negative entities lurking on buses, and satanic rituals gone wrong. It's a lot to process. It really is, and it ties into this bigger theme that seems to run through a lot of Herrera's experiences, this idea that there's this constant duality, like light and darkness, good and evil existing, not just in some other realm, but right here in our world, intertwined with our everyday lives.
And kind of a scary thought when you really think about it.
It can be, but it's also a reminder that life is complex. There's always more than meets the eye, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just part of being human.
So we've got this whole spectrum of experiences, from talking to dead loved ones to encountering terrifying entities. How does someone like Herrera even function in the world with all that going on?
Yeah. That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
How does someone who claims to see and feel and experience all this stuff, how do they live a normal life? It's got to be a trip, right? I mean, imagine going to the grocery store and sensing some entity lurking in the cereal aisle.
Or trying to have a normal date night when you're getting premonitions about the waiter.
Exactly. It's just not something most of us can even wrap our heads around.
So how does she deal with it? Does she ever talk about that?
She does, actually. Not in a here's my step-by-step guide to psychic self-care kind of way, but she definitely emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries and taking care of herself.
Makes sense. You got to have some kind of off switch, right?
Exactly. She's talked about needing to separate her work as a medium from her personal life, so it's not this 24/7 thing,
So she clocks out at the end of the day like the rest of us.
Well, not exactly. I mean, it's not like she can just hang up the phone on the spirit world, but she said that she has to consciously create that space for herself. to recharge and just be a normal person.
Right, because otherwise she'd be totally fried all the time.
Exactly. And it takes a lot of discipline and self-awareness, which she seems to have, thankfully.
That's good to hear, because it would be so easy to get lost in all that,
Totally.
It's
Especially with the kind of stuff she claims to see and hear. It'd be like having access to all the secrets of the universe all the time.
and not all of them good secrets either.
Right. Like, who needs to know about the creepy crawlies hiding in the fabric of reality?
No, thank you. I'm good. So where does this leave us? We've gone down this rabbit hole of Deanna Herrera's world spirits, negative entities, the whole shebang.
It's been a wild ride, for sure. And whether you believe it all or not, or maybe you're somewhere in between like me, you have to admit it makes you think.
Definitely. Like, even if we dismiss half of what she says as like overactive imagination or whatever, the other half is still pretty mind-blowing.
Totally. And it brings up those big questions that have always haunted humanity, right? Like, what happens after we die? Is there really something more out there?
The great mysteries.
Exactly. And maybe we'll never have definitive answers, but I think it's good to ask the questions to stay curious about the unknown,
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what this whole deep dive is about,
Yeah.
right? Exploring these different perspectives, even if they're way out there.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by opening our minds to these possibilities, we'll start to see the world and maybe even ourselves in a whole new light.
Maybe so.
Yeah,
And if not, at least we had some good spooky stories to tell around the campfire.
there's always that.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive into Diana Herrera's world. Thanks for listening.